that are most unlikely to be places where violent crime was committed. That's broken windows. And so the mayor and I and the rest of the DPD team several weeks ago started to talk about our spike in violence. We had a couple of bad weeks, and as much as we are making progress, we all feel that more needs to happen. And so we start talking about the unoccupied, abandoned homes across the city, the blight. And so as we discuss it, the mayor and I and the team, what if, and the mayor likes to say, what if we focused on those areas, the calls were coming in on crime? What if we were focusing on the areas where we've seen this spike in violence? What if? The what if is it can work. And so what we're doing today and what we're talking about today, by focusing in on an area where these three tragic situations have happened, makes good corporate sense. I believe that as we continue this work, our partnership with Building and Safety, General Services Department, and our neighborhood police officers, I believe as we harden the structure, harden the target, make our communities safer, crime will dissipate. I believe it. I believe it in my core. I've seen it in other situations on a much smaller scale, but I can tell you I've not seen anything of this magnitude. The kind of work that we're embarking on, I believe, is going to really make a profound difference. You can hold me to it, and I know you will. But I'm excited, I'm encouraged. I want to also thank our community volunteers. You know, what's so interesting about this great city, the people that, when there's a crisis, we stand together, we fight together for one cause. People have said we're fed up, we're tired, and so when I announced that I believe we had the makings of what appeared to be a serial killer, this community stepped up without hesitation. Even those members, those community leaders that don't necessarily agree with one another, they said, we want to get involved, we want to work. And so I just want to thank all of our community leaders that are standing with us today. From Patterson Road, Detroit 300, to name a few. Tafari Brink is not here today, and I know I'm going to miss a few. Vu, thank you. We're coming together, and I think this relationship is what makes a difference in this city. We know about the three locations, but there's one. We talk about the third location involving the one victim. This was the recent crime over on Mac. We have not identified that victim, so we are asking for the public's help. And so what we do know, and what the victim is described as, she's an African-American female, approximately 5 foot tall, roughly 100 pounds. We have no information, we don't know her age. She has a kind of short crop, maybe 3-inch afro hairstyle, small in stature. So we're asking for the public's help. If you have information about this victim who's missing, you can contact Homicide at 313-596-2260. And I just want to be clear, our number one priority is the safety of all members of our community. Every member of our community. And so for us to stand together and the work that our community leaders are doing on the ground, again, I just simply want to say thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Todd Bettison, who's going to really go into a little more detail as how the neighborhood police officers will work in the coming days and weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Hello, everyone. As the Chief said, I'm Deputy Chief Todd Bettison. My role is Chief's Neighborhood Liaison, working very closely with the community, overseeing the neighborhood police officers. So the neighborhood police officers will be deployed to search and clear houses prior to boarding. We will work in concert with the Department of General Services and the board-up crews. We're going to start today at 11 a.m. We're going to have 3 site locations. The locations that we'll rendezvous at will be I-75 in Coventry. Second site will be Lyndhurst and Shaner, and the third site will be Mack Avenue in Mount Elliott. As you know, that those are the locations in the vicinity where victims were found. We will start there, and we will work our way out and work until we actually clear all the houses. We expect to have that completed at the end of July. This will be a 6-day-a-week operation, and our neighborhood police officers will be out there, and we will get the job done. I want to thank the community members who have been out there to those same locations, and they have been operating from an awareness approach, notifying the community, making folks who are aware, because everybody, to my surprise, is not aware of what's going on. So, thank you, and also a special thanks to Fuqua Bay, the Moore Science Temples, because Mr. Bay said, hey, you know what, we would even help you go into abandoned houses and search. I said, Mr. Bay, thank you, but what we're asking for, and taking your suggestion also, is that the houses need to be boarded up after they're searching. So taking it a step further, we don't want the public or the community going into those houses. We will send our police officers into the houses in pairs because of safety concerns going into those houses, and we don't want to put our public at risk, but we do need our public support to reach out and continue to help make folks aware. Thank other community members as well. It's too many to name, but everybody has put egos aside and has worked together for a common cause, and I thank you all. And also standing behind me is OJ from Eyes Wide Open. I know he was out there last night as well. OJ, if you could please raise your hand. Thank you, sir. And at this point, of course, a staple in the community, you always know them by their orange shirts, the Detroit 300. They're there for everything. And at this point, I would like to acknowledge the president, Eric Ford, but speaking on behalf of Detroit 300 today will be Martin Jones. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, sir. All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
First of all, I'd like to definitely thank our mayor for his input and for allowing his team, his Detroit police officers, Chief Craig, Deputy Chief Bettison, as well as a number of the other officers that are amongst one of the finest police departments in the entire country. They've worked diligently with Detroit 300 as well as the other community organizations across the city to help to bring justice to a number of families that have suffered under violence across this community. This is something that's taken place for a number of years. We've been sick, we've been tired of it. Every time we open or turn on the television to watch the news, we've been disgusted, especially here recently, at the number of murders and the level of violence that's taking place all across this community. But what we have here today and what we have here now and what we're setting into place is a position where people are going to be able to openly communicate with these different organizations and also with the Detroit Police Department to tell what they know. The information that could help us to solve the majority of these crimes is within our community. It's a matter of getting the people to speak up. One of the efforts that we've made is to go door to door and to make personal contact with the citizens of the city of Detroit, whereas we've been able to obtain a great deal of information that we forward to the Detroit Police Department to help with their investigations. They cannot do it alone. The Detroit Police Department cannot do this job alone. They have to have help. The resources are right here within our own community to determine the destiny that we have ahead before us. Resources meaning that the people that are in the churches, the different community organizations, and all of us as a whole, we have the resources to get what we need done to stem the tide of violence that's taking place over our city. We should not have to live in fear. We should not have to worry about our sons and daughters on the way to school in the mornings. And we can change that by getting the men in this community to step up, getting the women in this community to step up, to be vigilant about coming out of their homes, watching out after their neighbors, watching after their neighbors' homes, watching after our senior citizens who are some of the most vulnerable in our community. But this is something, an effort that I believe is on a scale like never before, bringing everyone together, excuse me, under a very large umbrella to be able to address all of these issues. I'm looking forward to the day when these crime statistics sincerely drop and we make a difference. We want to make this plan of action that's been displayed to you today a plan of action that's going to be a model, not only for the city of Detroit, but for the country. We want the people across the country to come to Detroit to find out what it is that they're doing to address the crime and how do they bring these crime numbers down in the city of Detroit. When I talk to other people that are in different states, they also talk about how the same things that are happening in this city, where they're from Detroit, they're talking about how the same things are happening in the cities where they live at, whether it be to the south, the north, the east, or the west. These very same things are taking place. We want to build that model so that they have something to follow, so that we can reduce this crime all across this country. We want this to be that model, and we're going to perfect that model right here in the city of Detroit. It starts with the 3 locations that the police chief named. In particular, we've been to all of those locations. We had a network of people out in the streets, engaging the neighbors, knocking on doors, passing them information, because this is a very great opportunity to pass information on to them about the things that are taking place within their neighborhoods, which, as Deputy Chief Bedison described, people don't know what's going on in the neighborhoods. I don't know if they don't read the papers, if they don't have a television to where they can get the news. I don't know what the case may be that you don't know what's going on in your neighborhood. But this is a concerted effort to make the people in the community aware, to make it easier for them to report on tips, and I'm steady out there blasting 1-800-SPEAK-UP. 1-800-SPEAK-UP, where you do not have to give your name, you do not have to give your number. I encourage this because it gives them an opportunity to find out how to report a crime in the event that they don't want their names known, in the event that they don't want their telephone numbers out there for fear of reprisal. We want to take that fear of reprisal away so that we get our community members to speak up, speak out. We want to dispel the no snitching rule because there's no such thing. We don't want you to snitch. We just want you to tell what you know. Again, my name is Martin Jones. I'm the spokesperson for the Detroit 300 Community Action Team, and I thank you for the sign.
And at this point, I know we can't do it alone, and we have members of City Council here as well. And I'd like to bring up Councilman Scott Benson and also recognize Councilman Andre Spivey, who's here as well. Scott Benson.
All right, thank you, DC. Just want to say today I'm saddened that we are coming together for the results of this disgusting situation. I am, however, buoyed by the community's response to this case and how our residents are wrapping their arms around the family. And I just want to reiterate that we all have to be part of the solution and looking out for all of our residents, just as everyone has said here today. I just really want to say thank you and commend the efforts of all our community residents, especially Detroit 300, Detroit Police Department, as well as New Era and others who are committed to helping find and bring justice to these senseless murders. And so if you hear something, if you see something, call 911. It's up to all of us, and we all have to be part of the solution.
As we open it up for questions, I just want to acknowledge members who are here from our police commission. Thank you for being here as well. So with that, we open up for any questions you might have.
I have a question, Chief, on the board ups. The homes that are already boarded up, were they completely searched before they were boarded up? Is there any chance that victims might be in those homes that are already boarded up? And secondly, will you be using cadaver dogs or anything like that in these searches?
To your latter, we are considering the use of cadaver dogs. To the former, we have not searched the locations using Detroit police officers in this manner. So going forward, that's what we will be doing. And we have considered the deployment of cadaver dogs in some instances, but our neighborhood police officers are not going to wait for the deployment. They're going to go in, and if the residence is obstructed in such a way it presents a problem getting through, then that would be a great opportunity to do so.
But in the process of the city's process of boarding up homes, are the homes searched before they're boarded up?
I'm going to defer.
Brad,
Brad, they're not.
They're not.
They're not. I'm sorry?
No, no, she can ask that.
Mr. Mayor, what is your message to this potential serial killer or anyone who will commit a violent crime? And also, you know, with the comeback of the city, the development and positivity we're seeing in the city, which is where you're often seen, how do you address the criticism by some residents who feel that they don't see you speaking out enough on violent crime that's they feel is rampant in the city?
Let me start with this. I don't recall a time, and some of you may remember, I was the prosecutor before I was mayor. I don't remember a time where so many high-profile cases were solved so quickly by the Detroit Police Department. In the last month, case after case, in a matter of a few days, with citizen input. It has been remarkable the way the community has come forward with information. And so I'm greatly encouraged by that. And as far as the relative roles, we have a police chief. The police chief and I talk multiple times a day. And as a former prosecutor, I talk to his investigators, his management team several times a day. And I'm doing everything I can to get him the resources. But today, I think it's really important to ask for the help of all the community, cite the progress that we've made, and to announce that you now have the General Services Department, the Detroit Police Department, and the community hand in hand board up every single one of these houses after they've been searched by the police.
And Mr. Mayor, of the 18,000 buildings that have been demolished, does that include just residential or is it also commercial?
There's a small number of commercial, but it's overwhelmingly vacant houses. Probably 17,500 were residential houses.
Will you be going after commercial property that the city owns?
Then we have been. So we take down 5 or 6 commercial buildings a week, and we can give you the data on that, but I get a report every Friday. Our issue has not been so much commercial buildings, so they tend to get filled with tires, but we've had a number of instances in this city of tragedies in vacant residences. In some cases, they catch on fire and have burned occupied houses. We've had individuals attacked in them even before these 3 women. And we have got to get every single abandoned house first secured and then removed.
Chief Craig, I don't want to muddy the water anymore with the homicide, non-homicide, but we have a discrepancy in our reporting. The medical examiner said that Nancy Harrison was determined to be homicide for blunt force trauma on March 20th.
May 20th.
They are saying March 20th.
No. Well, the information that I have from my homicide team, it was May 20th. And again, we didn't start connecting the dots until subsequent locations of victims and residences that, as I oftentimes say, the signature or similarities in the crime scene. That's when a quick determination was made that, it appears that we may have a serial killer.
So the last 2, are they officially considered homicides as well then? Or
They are not as of today. The medical examiner has not provided a determination of death at this point.
So kind of bouncing off of that question, I think the family was saying, so the police department did get the medical examiner's report a month later. After the medical examiner, that's when they had a determination. But I guess the family was saying it was investigated as an overdose, but there were signs of trauma at the scene, and so.
That's not the information I got. The information I got was a known drug location area. The information I got is initially, it was believed that the victim overdosed, and it was later, and this is common, we might preliminarily think, and you're talking about a decomposed body. It's very difficult to identify trauma on a body that's decomposed. So there's no way. Now, again, I used an example yesterday. When we respond to a shots fired, we get to a scene, and there's a victim in the street. We have a crime scene. It's fresh. We generally know cause of death, even though the medical examiner will still render the final disposition. But this is a very different situation. As I pointed out over the last few days, you're talking about abandoned homes. Many times we're not getting calls that there's something suspicious going on in that house. So we don't know what's happening. Then someone, like in the 3rd case, someone that had gone into the house saw the victim but the victim had been there for days. That's the case. Each of them, they're in different states of decompose, and so it's very difficult to say, yes, this is a murder. We don't know. We can assume, but it's more of a challenge.
Chief, how do you, and Mr. Mayor, if you want to respond to this one too, because I think it's probably important to address some of the critics who believe that officials, the police, knew about a potential serial killer weeks, months ago. What do you want to say to those people?
Well, you know, we've talked about this, and this has been a question that was asked and answered over the last several days, and I'll go through it again. Certainly, we don't want to create fear. This department has and continues to be very transparent as it relates to crime. We are about the business of saving lives. As the mayor pointed out in his remarks, as it relates to this, while there was one of the three that was determined to be a homicide, but based on the similarities of the crime scene, I made a very quick determination that we need to get this information out. We need to focus on a particular community, in this case, a sex worker community. And that was the reason why it was important to mobilize community members, our volunteers, to get out. This is not a community that we normally have open dialogue with. Most time the police department is in an enforcement mode. But this is about protecting all members of our community. So the one case involving the dumpster, which we addressed, that was a relatively quick arrest. Again, as the mayor pointed out, the community helped us. And then when there was circulation through social media initially that there were 5 women in dumpsters in an area, we tried to determine if that was a true statement. Our investigations didn't find that. It was what we know of, one incident only. This issue about the serial killer had nothing to do with dumpsters. Again, the similarities of this case is that you have females, late 40s to 50s. In the case of the 2 that have been identified, 52 and 53, again, the third has not been identified. We're not certain of her age. And so we were very transparent, very quick to get the information out, because this is about the business of keeping people safe. So we don't hide that.
And Chief, I know on first day at Spirit Plaza, when you made the announcement that you were looking for a lot of leads and telling people to call the police or 1-800-SPEAK UP, have you gotten any solid tips or information to help possibly give us more information to put out there about a potential suspect?
We have been getting regular leads, tips. Community is very cooperative, and we're following up on each and every one. So our investigation is very active. Our investigators have been working these cases vigorously. And so by getting that information out, we predicted and knew that we were going to start getting calls, and we think we're going to continue to get that. We're not going to let up, and we're committed, and we're going to find this violent predatory criminal.
Is there any likelihood that, I know you mentioned that this could be a potential serial killer, but we're talking 3 different instances with patterns, as you mentioned, but is there any likelihood that there could be more than one suspect?
You know, that's always a possibility. I've had to deal with, I talked extensively about serial killer that I was involved with early in my career in Los Angeles. It spanned over 25 years. 25 years. One thing that I learned from that, that didn't happen early on in that case, there's very little interest by the community. There was certainly no community mobilization what we see here in Detroit. And I'm not being critical. I'm just saying, you know, this is how policing has evolved over the years. And in fact, that serial killer went dark for 14 years. Turned out he was a city employee. Actually, a civilian employee at one point of the police department. And so when you talk about sex workers, one of the challenges, we talk about, in our case here, abandoned homes. And I say this not in disrespect, but we know many times sex workers are invisible in our community in some instances. Families have not seen these individuals for months, for weeks. So there's not much of a, they're not likely to report folks missing, which offers yet another challenge for us. Is there a possibility of another suspect? That's always a possibility. You know, one of the things we see, especially in serial killer cases, there are individuals who copycat. I think during the LA case involving what was called the Grim Sleeper, there may have been a copycat, but he's credited with at least 25 murders of sex workers, but again, spanning 25 years. So that's always a possibility, but we have to look at what we have before us, and given the experience of our investigators, my tenure, we believe it's possibly the same person.
And Chief, I know you've got a lot of groups behind you helping with this investigation, but will there be a point when maybe other police departments like Highland Park that's near some of these areas will get involved too?
That depends. We're fluid. We evolve daily. We're constantly reassessing. As has been pointed out, today we're launching with our neighborhood police officers, our community members together, other city departments. A week from now we may move in a slight different direction. Just depends on, we're not static. We're always evolving and going in another direction depending on our find.
Can you talk a little bit about the invisibility sometimes of this? I don't want to beat this death here, but I'm looking at a post-mortem report from March 20th of the first victim, and we keep hearing May 20th as the date. Is it concerning if it took that long to get your, what's going on?
Well, you know, and I guess my homicide team could probably, and I don't know how often, how long it takes. Certainly that seems lengthy, but at that time we had one homicide, and clearly we'd like to know right away it's a homicide. But again, the challenge in cases like this, when you talk about bodies that are decomposed, it's not a real simple determination. And so I know I have Captain McGinnis here. You want to talk briefly? I know you provided me with information.
So that report, the victim in that case was examined by the Wayne County Medical Examiner on March 20th. That's what the date is at the top of the report. At the bottom of the report is when he made his ruling on May 20th. My team was in constant contact with the family, and I actually would like to take this opportunity to thank the family because their persistence with the Wayne County Medical Examiner, I think, is what led to that ruling coming when it did. So as soon as we were aware that it was a homicide, that's when we started taking action in the sense of really examining what else was going on.
Are there any other questions?
Will additional personnel be required to do the board ups, or will this be the existing personnel?
We have 8 teams of 5 individuals, and they are extremely efficient. We are just going to put them on overtime and work them longer hours. But given the rate at which they've been moving, we do believe we will have every house boarded up on the east side by the end of July and every house in the city boarded up by the end of September, and they'll be making some overtime.
And the release said that there were going to be some tips for people. What can people, especially in those areas, do? And there was some talk about bringing back like Angels Night, like patrols in those areas.
We're encouraging every community member. One of the things that we're certainly looking for, again, I want to applaud the work of our community leaders who will be on ground, having conversations with all community members, and even those who are less inclined to talk to us. But we think that we do have our neighborhood police officers who have significant relationships with many people that will be able to get information. But as it relates to someone who lives in a neighborhood where there's an abandoned residence and you see suspicious activity, call us. We want to get that call because, you know, we've gotten reports in the past, whether it's illegal drug use, whether it's sex workers involved in activities. So we want to know that, and we certainly want the community who lives in neighborhoods that are in close proximity to abandoned homes, that as our community leaders are out on the ground, talk to them, let them know what they've seen, because everything helps.
I can't remember if this has been asked already, but to the board piece, are the homes that are being boarded up normally inspected before they're boarded up?
As it's already been indicated, not to the degree it will be now. They've been boarded up, but at this point, our police officers are going to go in and clear that location first. Once it's an all clear, then the board of crews will board the house up.
So there's a possibility then if their houses are boarded up without being searched, that there may be.
I don't want to speculate. I mean, we're hopeful that even through the work that we'll be doing over the next weeks, that we find out another body. That's what we hope for. But we do need to do that. We do need to do the inspection. And if, as we do the inspections and there's a finding, certainly we'll make sure that you are aware of it and the community is aware of it.
Given the state of the bodies when they were found, it would seem that there's a period of cooling off if more bodies aren't found. Do you expect to find more bodies in these?
As I indicated, I'm hopeful that we not find one more body. Again, we talk about decomposed and, you know, we're coming out of the winter season. The rate of a body decomposing is very different than in the warmer months. Typically, in the warmer months, there's a distinctive odor attached to remains, and sometimes we get reports and we respond to that because of that, but the wintertime is somewhat different because it's the climate. So again, another challenge, but not something that we can't overcome. Any other questions?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.